all of you must have heard of POCSO, Prevention of Child Sexual Abuse. There is a law. We will have our advocate Ruth Thomas talk to us more from the legal perspective, and I think she's the right person to tell us, because at the end of the day, how much ever NGOs or social workers or parents or children or CWC works towards the safer society or for the better of children. I think at the end of the day, it lies in the court's room for justice to be extended to these children, or for the warning or threats that the others can also learn from. So before Ruth takes over, I will introduce her. Just a moment. Yes. So Ruth Thomas is presently the co-founder of SRT Law Associates. It's engaged in multi-law practice with special focus on women, children, and vulnerable groups. She's worked as a legal consultant for an international organization on human trafficking for 8 years, 8.5 years. She started her career working on sex trafficking cases in Mumbai. Her work experience includes rescues and trials on ITPA matters, POCSO matters, and rape cases. She spent about 4 years tackling labor trafficking cases in Karnataka, where she worked closely on bail, trial, and appeal matters. Ruth has trained many police officers, NGO members, judicial officers, lawyers, law students, prosecutors across the nation on ITPA, POCSO, and labor laws. She was a member of the task force that drafted the comprehensive standard operating procedures to combat human trafficking in Karnataka. She's also co-authored a research paper called Systemic Apathy, Victims of Human Trafficking and the Struggle for Justice. With that, I would like to call upon Ruth Thomas to share with us from the legal perspective.
Thank you for that grand introduction. I'm really humbled, and I'm also inspired by the earlier distinguished panel members who I am in awe of. Both Sonal ma'am and Priya ma'am, both of them have given their experiences, and it is true. It is true, absolutely, in all that they said. And also, 2 days back, I was part of a legal a webinar wherein actually I was listening to a group of bar council members, basically my fellow mates who were also talking on the issue of POCSO. And surprisingly, they said that POCSO is a law that is not bringing in justice to the defense accused. So they are like, there are no bails given, and it's kind of hard, and it is a system wherein only victims are taken into consideration. And so it was very, very different, because for me, I'm coming from I usually take up cases from the state point of view, and it was kind of different to see and understand their side as well. But I understood that, when it comes to implementation and enforcement, though we know that POCSO has a lot more to go, it has been enforced in a slightly better way compared to the other laws in place. That's why, I mean, the defense lawyers are finding it hard to, at least get their accused scot-free. So it's not that easy in POCSO. Most of the cases are non-bailable, so it's kind of harder. And so that perspective was what I was trying to see. But I understood that, and I was all the time there was this issue with me that, why are POCSO cases not reaching convictions and not reaching the stage where we want to be. But that day I was kind of satisfied seeing that, at the same way, like comparatively to the other laws that we see, I feel like POCSO has a little more better enforcement than we see in criminal laws. With that, I thought I'll just get into the POCSO Act. I'll just share my screen. I think you're able to see, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So as you all know, the rights of the children are basically 4 major rights. That is the right of survival, the right to development, which includes intellectual, psychological, as well as physical development. And we all know that for a child to be intellectually stimulated and holistically developed, there should be an environment free of abuse. And so protection laws are very much important. And that's when we realize that, prevention is always better than cure. And a child can, completely and holistically develop only when there's an environment that will stimulate that child's growth. And we also know that participation of the child is very important for that child's development, and it is a right. Like we've all heard about the UN conventions on the rights of child, and they have reiterated the same thing, wherein they've clearly stated that children must have survival rights, developmental rights, protection rights, and participation rights. And more than that, any measures that the state takes or the organization takes, it should be in the best interest of the child. And any measure that is taken should be in a way that there's no discrimination against any subject for the child, and they must be equally dispersed to children from all sectors. And fourthly, that is the most important one, that is participation of the child. The child has every right to give their opinion, and the opinion must be considered for the welfare measures that is taken for the child. And we also know within the SDGs that this has been a major topic. Protection of children from abuse has been specifically laid out, unlike the older SDGs where we didn't have that specific target. Right now, this has been a target taken up internationally, where all states needs to commit themselves and ensure that children are protected from all kinds of abuse. So with regard to child protection laws, one of the most important laws, like all other laws, is POCSO Act. Till 2012, we did not have a specific act that dealt with child sexual abuse. So if you see, that itself is a great step. Till 2012, we had to take up IPC sections and utilize it when a child gets assaulted or when a child gets sexually harassed. So but with the 2012, there's been a change, and one of the major change was this POCSO Act that came about. And one thing that we need to know about POCSO laws is that it is an evergreen document. Comparatively, it keeps getting amended from time to time. If you see any other law, most of the law are very redundant, but we still use it, and some of the laws never get amended. But POCSO, the lawmakers in some areas have understood that this is a law that needs change from time to time. They are also looking into the implementation part of it, and whenever there's a gap, they are able to fill in those gaps. I'm not saying completely, but there has been a change compared to other laws. For example, if you look at ITPA, we still follow a 1956 Act, which needs change. But when you see, if you see POCSO is the only, act which is getting amended from time to time. So we have an amendment with regard to both the act, as well as we have rules to substantiate these amendments. Because of it, each time there's a gap, that gap is getting, sealed by each of these provisions. One of the major important part of this act is the definition, that it is very clearly defined. Because when we go into a court of law, what we see is that earlier it was very hard for the judges to understand what kind of definitions would come under child sexual assault, or what is child what happens if it's just child sexual harassment, which will the accused get convicted, what are the sections, how do you interpret it. All of this was a question that was always leading to a lot of confusions, both from the state side and from the judges side. But with this act, what we see is that there's clear definitions. There's penetrative sexual assault. What do you mean by penetration? What do you mean by just touching the child, or the child forcing another person to touch? All of this is clearly defined, which makes it easier for the enforcers to put in sections right from the investigation to the justice delivery. So now we have offenses like penetrative sexual assault. We have aggravated sexual assault. Aggravated sexual assault are those assault wherein institutions are involved in the sexual assault of the child. So if a person who is in charge of the child commits a crime, and that person is part of the police force or armed forces or educational institutions or religious institutions, those people will not come under the normal category of just a sexual assault category. They will come under the aggravated offenses. So we have these specific laws just so that the enforcers understand that these sections needs to be added in based on the facts and circumstance of each case. And moreover, we have also other offenses laid out, like sexual harassment, where even if there is a word exhibited with sexual intention on the child, that will also be regarded as an offense. Apart from that, in 2019, there was a specific definition put on pornography. So now we have different stages of pornography. Now, even if the child is, even if there's a child pornography as well as the child is, sexually assaulted, if both happens, what do you do? In such cases, also the act is clearly stated what is the definition, and how is the offense going to be categorized. In such situations, what we see is that the court will frame charges of not just pornography but also of sexual assault. So to ensure that this person is because this person has committed both these crimes, the court also wants to see it court also wants to see it from both sides. And then the other features are that it has to be mandatorily reported, which means if it's happening within an institution or a family, or even if we are getting to know of it, it's important that we mandatorily report, and that if you don't report, there's also a penalty given. So there's this onus on every individual to ensure mandatory reporting if such offenses happen. And then obviously on confidentiality. Confidentiality is another important aspect laid out, wherein the child's details with regard to name, address, which institution they are in, all of this needs to be maintained and privacy should be ensured. But what we see in most of the cases, like in, with regard to the media persons and things like that, is that we see their photographs still being circulated, and these things then this is a complete breach of the entire act, and this is where we need a change. We need journalists and professionals who are part of media houses to understand the importance of this act and to work ethically and professionally. And we also want implementers. This is where we see the lack. Like, many of the police officers do not file a case against the journalist, but in these cases we need to ensure, if we need to bring in accountability, it is important that they face consequences, and the way we can face consequences is only by filing charges. And so it's important for the police to ensure that these FIRs are filed or fines are taken from the members who are breaching such information. Another great feature of the law, like Priya Madam has already said, is child-friendly investigation. So this is the only act actually which speaks about child-friendly investigation, which means that when a child is taken for any kind of investigation, the police officers are to be trained. They need to talk to the child in a very child-friendly manner, which means the police officers are mandated not to come in uniforms. They are supposed to, question the child only in front of their family members. And also it's deeply preferred that these investigating officers go to their homes and get the investigation, so that this child does not feel traumatized by coming to these police stations. But again, this will depend on facts and circumstances of the case. In many cases, these children are not even at homes, they must be in protective homes. And here again, it's very important that these police officers go to these protective homes, but do not traumatize the child, but ask questions in a very friendly manner. But these are things that can change too, because we see that this child, goes through several rounds of investigation. So there is first round of investigation from the police. Then there's another round of inquiry from CWC members. Then there's another round of inquiry from the judges. So this is something that can traumatize the child, which Priya ma'am has already talked about. But I feel like this needs a change, and hopefully there must be more creative solutions wherein all of them can come to a common platform and ask questions, and it'll be easier for the child to finish up answering the questions at one go. So, but again, this is something that we are hoping will change. But again, we are kind of happy with the investigative procedures laid out under the law. Apart from that, we have a special court, which is again one of its kind. We have that in ITPAs, and then we have it in several special offenses. And since POCSO is considered as one special offense, we have a special court wherein we have a special judge who is trained on this matter. And then we also have both that is prosecutors and victim counsels who would help this child in giving their testimony. Now, comparatively to other laws, there is a specific time period given under the POCSO Act. According to the Act, the trial needs to be completed within 1 year from the charge sheet being filed, and a child who comes for testimony must have completed the testimony with 30 days. So that is the minimum time given. I know this is not followed in most of the cases, especially with the pandemic right now. It has become worse, but the highlight here is that compared to other laws, because there's no specific timeline given, it can go on for about, even 6 and 10 years. What we see a difference right now with our matters and the POCSO is that many of these judges, knowing the timeline here, makes these cases a priority. So most POCSO matters are at least at the turn of priority cases, and the judges try to finish POCSO cases faster than the other matters. So like I've already, spoken about some of these things, I'm just going to get into the major procedures so that all of us have an idea of what to do. One of the things that we all need to understand that, we need to give a complaint to the police station. It can be to the police station. It can be to an NGO. That NGO person can go and give the complaint to the police station, or you can use toll-free number like 1098. But a complaint has to be given. Now, I would suggest, if you need to ensure that sections are added, please give a written complaint to the police station. Give a written complaint with clear facts written, so that there is no kind of changing the sections. If possible, write down the sections also, that this person has committed offenses under these sections. And when you give a written order, a written complaint, it becomes harder for the police to twist. So I would always suggest have a written order, give a written complaint. And once the written complaint is given, then the police will have to file the FIR. I know there are many situations where FIR doesn't get done. So in such situations, it's important that you get to know the next step. The next step for any normal citizen, no matter what is your professional status, the next step that we can all do is appear before the SP of that district, or write a letter to the SP of the district saying that my FIR is not getting filed. And then the SP will look into the factor and will have to ask the district, whichever police station, why such an FIR is not being filed. So this is again important. FIR is mandated, especially for POCSO offenses. It's a mandate that FIR be filed. But in cases, ensure that you do not give up in that instance, but meet up with the higher officers. And once the FIR is done, the next step that is getting done is 161 statements. So many of us are so unaware. We don't know, the police will say, I want to do the 161 statements, I'm coming. Many of us are unaware. Don't get freaked out. It is just a statement taken. Okay, they will take the statement of the child. They will take the statement of the families around. If there are eyewitnesses around, they will take the statements. That's it. There's nothing to be worried. The most important thing here is to ensure that the child is given enough support. And, the parents can also sit for such a recording of the statement. You don't need to go away, and then take and the police will take the 161 statements. Now, another great feature under the POCSO Act, which is not there in many of the acts, is the 164 statements. 164 statement is nothing but a statement recorded by the magistrate. Now, this is very, very important. Why? Because the magistrate will understand the nitty-gritties of law. They will understand what needs to be added. And so it's always important to have done the 164 statement. And then there are other, evidences collected, like medical reports. In many cases, medical reports are not very significant because the child must have become an adult, and the whole medical reports are not very significant comparatively. In some cases, because the medical reports were not formulated at the initial stage of the event, it gets more and more confusing, or the medical report that was formulated was wrong. So all of this can happen, but these things are also important. The police needs to add it into the charge sheet, and a final report is formulated. This final report is then submitted before the courts, and the courts would then, trial takes place, and then judgment is done. Now, again, some of the thing that we need to know is that, and in the trial courts also, most of the prosecutors do not understand everything under the POXO Act. Even though they are the special prosecutors, most of the time what we see is that the same prosecutor will be a special prosecutor under the SC/ST Act. The same prosecutor would be the special prosecutor for ITP offenses. So he is also overloaded. So I would suggest the best way is to engage lawyers who can take up such matters, and these lawyers will definitely know, especially POXO lawyers who have experienced taking up POXO cases, will definitely know what are the steps and how it can be mitigated in each stage. So every time, and also to have use support services, like Priya ma'am said, it's a very new amendment that is brought about. Not every state has a fully fledged support service, but utilize them, because support services also allow you to move forward in understanding where your cases are. Most of the time CWC members help with the rehabilitation, but most of the time what we see is the children and the families are unaware about the legal aspects. So the support person will definitely give you a link on what needs to be done, what are the things that needs to be done even in the courts, and they can even ask what's happening in the investigation state. And so the children and family would definitely be able to understand where their stage is. Now, like we've already stated, there's a lot of challenges. And one of the most important things that I would say is to have role clarity. Every department should have role clarity, which needs to be specific. Most of the time what we see is that if the SJPU knows what to do, the prosecutor doesn't know what needs to be done. So that role clarity is very much important, and that can be done only through training. So we need to have more people who are expert in their fields to give trainings to others as well. For example, a lawyer will not be able to give a trainings for social workers, so there must be an NGO who is specialized in rehabilitation to do trainings for social workers. At the same time, a social worker cannot train a prosecutor. Have more lawyers who are experienced in these legal activities to train prosecutors. So this is something that is very much needed. Apart from that, we need to have more community members who understand the issue. And this is another thing that we need to see throughout, where families as well as religious institutions, schools understand that this is something very essential, needs to be talked about, and child needs to have a separate session. They can use peer education, they can use different modes in ways to understand that even if an abuse happens, what is the response mechanism I need to do. So this is very important, to have strengthened community services, as well as ensuring that we have a strong responsive care. Apart from that, we also need to have proper budgeting. This is something that we see across, whether it's state departments or central departments. What we see is there's a lack of budgets, and because of which many of these services are not being able to function in their most effective manner. So what is needed is more advocacy from the central and the state side to understand, to ensure that there is proper allocation made for child protection cases and child protection laws. Only then all the district centers like the CWC or the SJPUs, or even the prosecution side will have their services in place. For example, in court, we are supposed to have a counselor, but we do not know. Many of the judges don't know how to compensate, how to ensure that how to ensure to bring in a counselor. So in many cases it's an issue, but we've seen positive changes. Like if you when I was practicing in Bombay, definitely there was a change. There were counselors appointed. The judges also knew how to take care of such cases where they had to use the help of counselors. So it all depends on how the state in each place is also strengthened, and how the districts utilize these budgets as well. But it's very important to have an increase in budget when it comes to child protection laws. And then we also need to understand that there must be proper data. Right now, we don't have any data, whether it's from the legal side or from the social side or from the law point of view. What we see is we don't have enough data to back up any of our arguments. So what we need is data-driven evaluation, and then only can we know how to build our targets. So very much important for all departments, irrespective of which department we are working with. It's very important to back it up with data. So with that, I would like to say that this child child protection is not easy. It needs a multifaceted response. We cannot, like say that, we cannot say that it should be seen squarely. It can't be, because there are different departments involved, right? And it's very pluralist if you see. So what we need is a very convergent approach. Yes, we need to know our roles, but at the same time converge with departments, converge with other institutions, partner with other institutions. So we need a convergent and integrated and inclusive approach if we need to have a change in the way the situation is right now. With that, I conclude my presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ruth, for sharing with us on the legal aspects and the each influencing agent, or the role that each aspect plays in extending justice to these cases. Next, we have Shanti Hopper. She's a senior manager with World Vision